We're going via Zoom to catch up with Nicole Dunn from Empower Care. Nicole, welcome to The Informer.
Thank you for having me, George.
Happy New Year. It's the first time we've caught up with you since we got into this 2021 season. One of the questions I want to raise with you, especially with your specialty with aged care, my mother is ageing and lives in Sydney, and very difficult for me to assess how she's doing and how she's coping, and I leave it entirely up to my daughter and to my brother and the rest of the family to keep an eye on her. Just how important is it, especially through this COVID pandemic that we've had, to be able to assess just how they are, our parents, whether it's mum or dad or both of them?
Yeah, look, it's incredibly important, and whether that be changes that a senior person identifies within themselves or changes that the family are picking up. Often people come to me for advice because they've noticed some changes in health and physical functioning. Often those changes are around, how someone's walking or whether they've become more unsteady or had a fall. Sometimes it can be that just doing day-to-day tasks can be a little bit more difficult, and they're often the more physically demanding tasks, whether someone has stopped driving or shopping's difficult. But it can also play out in changes in memory or changes in nutrition. And I think COVID has sort of made some of these changes amplified a little bit more. Sometimes with the clients that I see, I think to myself, gosh, if I saw them 6 months ago or a year ago, I could have linked them in with a care plan and a program so much earlier. So the importance of recognising these changes and not only just recognising them, but going on to speak to a health professional is so important, because it means that early intervention tends to have much better outcomes in terms of keeping someone independent and well, and most importantly at home.
Now, you work with many aged care homes and people. The word I want to use is this part of your day-to-day training? When you walk in and you're attending to someone, are you ticking all the boxes to see if there are subtle shifts and subtle changes? Because I know through the Christmas New Year where we had a bit more time with our parents, especially, I'm not talking about Victoria, I'm talking about the rest of the country, it may well have been a little bit easier for families to identify these changes, because when people are locked away, it's not so easy to identify these very subtle shifts and changes.
Absolutely. So I'm predominantly seeing people who are still at home in their own home, and we do find it's really busy in the months of January and February, and it's because families have spent more time together, so they're more able to pick up on some of these changes. Myself as a health professional, I've got a bit more experience on picking up some of the more subtle signs, and of course that a full comprehensive assessment of someone aids to pick up on some of those subtle signs. But it can be difficult because sometimes it can be so simple as noticing a bruise on someone's arm and saying, "Oh, how did you get that?" And then it comes out, "Oh, I had a fall last week," and that opens up a conversation of, "Well, has that happened before?" Or have you felt more unsteady on your feet? And, it's not uncommon that I've noticed things that family are saying, "I had no idea mum had a fall last week." I often find as well that older people tend to not want to worry their children.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They say to me, my son or my daughter, they're working, they've got their own children to look after. I don't want to worry them. So sometimes they might be aware of some changes in memory or how things are getting on day to day, but they might minimise it or just not say something because they don't want to worry their children.
Nicole, there is the other element too. People are ageing. We expect a little slippage and a little difference. How important is it to try and discern what is indeed a little change and just simply ageing? How do you differentiate the two?
Yeah, look, I would certainly be saying that any of these changes we've been discussing today, whether it be falls or memory or nutrition, none of this is really a normal part of aging, and it would always be advisable to have it followed up with a health professional. And it tends to be even more important to get that prompt follow-up if these changes are out of character or if they're starting to get worse or progressive.
Now, do you broach the subject with the families if you see a subtle shift?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. So, often I might be the one that has noticed some changes for the first time, and then I'm giving that feedback to the families. Often I'm giving advice to families about how to start these conversations. So I have a lot of sons or daughters who say to me they've noticed changes with their parents. They've noticed that things are getting a bit harder to do around the house, but they don't know how to start a conversation. They don't know how to tell their mum or dad, oh, it looks like, it's getting a bit harder for you to get to the shops, because they're worried that, will I offend them? Am I overstepping the mark? What if they tell me to just, bugger off and the whole thing is shut down?
You just touched on a very, very sore point. How do you tell mum or dad that their driving days are over?
So whether it be driving or anything, I think you've always got to broach a situation by being informed first. So that, sometimes it's up to a health professional to make some of these calls. But if you're not aware of what services and supports are out there, that makes it very difficult. I think always keeping in mind the principles of trying to keep someone independent, but trying to keep someone safe and trying to keep someone in as good health as possible always makes a conversation easier. And it's really about, asking some questions to try and get an idea from the person themselves, what are they experiencing, and really listening to the information that's coming back in terms of guiding a conversation towards having some support from a professional.
Now, late last year, I noticed you said to me that the federal government had granted some more money for aged care. Are we seeing some of that money filter through, which will allow some of the support that the families need get to where it deserves to be? I remember we had this conversation and you said they need to do more. Now, we have finally got to that stage where the money's there. Is it getting through?
So it is slowly starting to trickle through. What we saw is significant increases in funding, in particular towards home care packages last year, which is a main government program that aims to keep people at home by allowing them to use funding to purchase home care services. So what we're seeing is the waiting lists are starting to trickle down because there are more home care packages available, but the waiting lists are still quite long to access them. They're in the vicinity of months, not weeks. So, it is still an area where more work, could be done.
Yeah, absolutely. As usual, thank you very much for the clarity. Nicole Dunn is our specialist from Empower Care, Aged Care, and each and every week we try and reach out to her. Some weeks she's very, very busy, but when she's free, she joins us on The Informer. Nicole, thank you once again, and I look forward to our next discussion again around aged care.
Thank you, George.